Here to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is content and future-proofing growth-driven marketing. We're going to talk about streamlining this notion of a content supply chain and the role that AI plays in either making it faster, more dangerous, better, or worse. And for context, we've had a lot of conversations about how regulatory driven this industry is, and this panel is probably a showcase for that, because one of the people on the panel was to be my good friend Danelle Morrow, who runs RevOps at Vanguard. And on Monday, the compliance department decided that this was too risky to have their head of RevOps present at this thing. Fortunately, we have my good friend Daniel Dartz, who is an expert and CMO, and who's also will call me on my stuff, which I like about him. So we want to have this be sort of an open conversation. There's a lot to talk about here, actually, and I really value the opportunity to talk about content holistically, and then actually have you talk about it in the real-world context.
My pleasure.
So, what we want to do is talk about the growing role. To level set, no one's really talked about it at baseline, but the growing role that content plays in the modern go-to-market model. I think we've heard the analogy of oil, gasoline, and oxygen. One of the things that most organizations don't do is add up just how many pieces of content they have, how much it costs, and how much their organization is involved in creating that. So we want to talk about that, and then nobody really asks, what is the business impact of content? Does it make my media work better? Does it advance the sales cycle? Does it build brand preference? All those things. But no one's really, they just make it because they have to have it. It's got to be pretty. They need to tell something to advisors or customers. So we're going to ask that question. And so we're going to talk about the business outcomes across owned, earned, shared, paid, and enabled channels with lips, because content also helps sales and people and customer support people. We want to talk about the specific ways content generates business outcomes. And then the biggest issue is, how is AI making this better, more complicated, worse, or riskier? So I want to start the conversation by just talking about content. This is my financial view of the marketing mix. Everyone looks at it a different way, but I work with a lot of B2B firms, and this is a composite of data from all of the media analysts, Gartner, Content Marketing Institute, a bunch of benchmarks. Every firm is different. But when you look at it, so much of marketing, digital marketing, is focused on paid media. And that includes paid social, search, digital advertising, out-of-home, audio. But really, at least in a B2B context, it's a relatively small slice of the pie. So, the pink, less than a quarter. Then there's earned media. That's the stuff that's getting us SEO, or increasingly GEO, or zero-click search. That's PR. That's customer advocacy. That's inbound there's content marketing that's inbound to my website. That's generally run by a PR firm. There's a lot of energy on that. A lot of the people on stage were earned media. They're out there on stage doing webinars, giving speeches, trying to generate interest in their firm. Shared media is this. If I paid to be in this conference or sponsor NASCAR or something cool like that, or maybe be at an industry conference or academics, that's shared, the equity is shared. The biggest slice is owned marketing channels, and I wanted to get to that. These are websites, these are landing pages, these are email campaigns, these are your own webinars, this is sales enablement. That's a lot of content that drives those things. The average organization has 10, 20 channels, depending on how you slice them, that are generating content. That takes a lot of content. We have data and technology infrastructure that personalizes that content and points it in directions and offers and incentives. And if that content happens to have a price incentive or some type of offer, that's on there. But just a dumb question. Has anybody ever added up the amount of content, how much it costs, the number of people creating it, are using it in their organization? Would you say it's dozens, hundreds, thousands? So I'm on a content Tiger team. There are 50 people on that Tiger team, from the people doing customer case studies, to the people doing creative, to the people doing white papers, long-form videos. And the budgets are huge. They're doing branded content and things like that. They're delivering it through a variety of channels. None of those channels are talking to each other. So this is the environment that I see out there. That's a level set. So why does content matter? Well, in the media context, people are always saying, how can I get my media to work harder and perform harder? Obviously, buying it at scale, placing it correctly is great. But what we learned is shrinking the audience using data, enabling it with really good channel-ready content, aligning that content across all the different channels, and using innovations like the ones we're seeing here today can make a big impact. The reason I bring this slide up, and this study is available, but basically when we looked at what can you do to increase the financial impact of your media without spending an extra nickel on that media, if you just do a number of smart things, you can improve dramatically. Content in orange, just getting content aligned, consistent, personalized, and targeted to buyer persona in the right place can really move the needle in terms of your media. Now, I'm going to stop now, but here's the challenge we have. When we talk to marketers, marketers can all tell me what their value story, brand positioning, and messaging is. They spend a lot of money. Any CMO I know could pull a deck, brand standards, and tell me what those things are. But can I take those things and jam them into the channels and go-to-market programs we have in place? For example, how much of that content can be tailored to target persona? My client is selling to finance people, compliance people, marketing people, and network security people. Do they have content that actually talks to that human being or just some brand? Where are they in the customer journey? So much of the content is, I'm a bank, I'm a good bank, we're good guys or good gals. Not enough of it is, how do I reboot my router, or what do you say the number one bank query is?
Reset their password.
So that's the number one query. You get a lot of attention just by doing that. Yeah. So I think I'm going to pause there. I don't know what my next slide is, but I was going to pause there. But what I wanted to do was just tee up this notion that content has financial value. It has a cost. It has dozens or hundreds of stakeholders, including agencies. A lot of those guys aren't talking to each other, or gals aren't talking to each other. A lot of times it's made in silos. The PR people are making their content. The thought leadership people are making their content. The website people are making their content. And that this factory is a complete mess. So I wanted to level set on that, and I wanted Daniel to say, Steve, are you full of it? Or is this really a picture of the world from the CMO perspective?
Well, Steve,
I am full of it. But
first I want everyone to give a round of applause. These cartoons are drawn by Steve.
No AI assistance.
And that's very impressive. So, and the second thing is where I work, if you heard my earlier presentation, we make no mistakes. So I don't have any of these issues. But I'll start by saying that I think one of the biggest mistakes vis-a-vis content in the banking financial service industry is thinking you can deal with content if you don't understand it. And this is like a huge problem. So people who are in marketing and don't understand what credit is or what underwriting is or how banks make money on credit spreads or fees are really just in the wrong business, because you're never going to be additive to content. You're never going to get your content to fit through those different personas and different shapes.
Square pegs and round poles.
Yeah. If you don't really know what you're talking about. So, and I'm not trying to be overly confrontational. I'm just saying, like, that's a real thing in banking. If you were in consumer goods, it's like everybody has an instinct to buy a stuffy animal, or a new set of shovels in the winter, that kind of thing. But if you're in banking or financial services, it really helps if you kind of understand how this stuff works, because it's going to make you a much more effective content producer, a much more effective arbiter of what should be developed and where it goes and who's it doing. So one of the things I often say is, it doesn't matter how senior I am, I'm really here just to help the sales guys work. Like, that's the whole deal. And I'm not here to make a name for myself. No one's going to say, oh, you were a great marketer. I'm really here to help the company generate revenue. So when I think about content, when I think about value story, brand position, and messaging, I want to think about those in terms of how are my client-facing colleagues going to be able to use that? How are they going to be able to use it? So as an example, I was at a session just earlier on LinkedIn. I brought up a question about LinkedIn. It was actually quite good. It was a guy from Magnolia, was it? And I said, well, what about well, anyway, we're talking about like different ways you use LinkedIn. This is an event. So if you, I'd love to have pictures of me that don't make me look old and confused, but I have no value to be shown in this LinkedIn thing. But if my salespeople to be shown at this event in a LinkedIn post is what I'm saying. But when people who sell for Flagstar are private bankers or corporate lenders or executives, when they're at an event, even if it's playing golf, and we get great coverage, I want to push that thing out in LinkedIn, because I know that our prospects, because I understand the marketplace for large corporate lending or large regional commercial lending, I know that that audience is also following some of these senior people at Flagstar Bank, and they're going to be looking at links, they're going to follow these different executives. So that to me is just kind of giving you a taste of how I would look at it. But I do think, and I keep looking over at a colleague of mine, because we do so many of these things together. We have a new senior executive in private banking. He came over from another bank. He brings tons of opportunities with him. He said to me literally on Friday, so 6 days ago, I really need an X, like I need this kind of brochure thing digitized that talks about what we do and our value prop. So instead of saying, well, I've got a long list of things, I can maybe get to that in February, which would be a very legitimate approach, right? Because we're managing a pipeline, there's a lot of demands. I look at this man and I say, this is a huge rainmaker. He's bringing over billions of prospective dollars to our bank. So you know what I did? I went home and I actually wrote it that night. We have a kind of format. I work with one particular senior designer. I just jammed it on him. I said, this is how it should look. Together we chose the photographs. We chose which images or which kind of diagrammatic stuff we wanted to have in it. And it's done. Today's Thursday. I actually sent it to him this morning. And it's all the language is compliant. So he can actually use it. So that's a way of being responsive. That's a way of prioritizing and saying, now, the question maybe is also, how did I use AI? I use AI all the time. If any of you ever heard me speak 12 months ago, I was like, I don't use AI, be smart, I'm smart, I write well, whatever. I was so wrong. I use AI all the time. What I've done is I've built AI memory chunks. I say, pull up Flagstar Private Banking, brand voice, Darst voice, which is like more minimalist, not a lot of adjectives, and take the last way we wrote about lending and upgrade it to a high net worth audience or whatever. And that's how I use it. And then I look at it and I edit it myself and I say, oh, this sucks, this is good, this is a little off. And I either put it back or I do it myself. But honestly, in a 30-minute period of time, I've taken what is potentially a project that in the old days, like in the aughts or the teens, would have taken 3 weeks with a whole bunch of people messing around. I've done it sort of inside a 12-hour period of time.
And that's great.
I'm answering a bunch of things, but that's how I kind of look at the world.
Well, I'd love to talk more about that. Just one dumb question. Do you use the word content in a budget meeting? And is there a person in your organization who's got content in their title? Like, is there a king or queen of content? And do you feel like it's managed coherently at your firm? Or is it just, you say you're writing a lot of this content, which is interesting, but do you feel like you got a handle on how all the content is created in your own organization?
Well, I don't want to be immodest, so I'm going to say no, I don't. But if anyone did, it would be me. But I am very transparent about it, so I really try to make it clear. If we're in a new industry, a new vertical called power and renewables, I didn't even know we were in the, we probably hired some people from another bank to do this. It's investing and structuring financing for that industry. I reach out to the person who I think is in charge of power and renewables and say, I don't know a thing. Or, I mean, I know 10% of 100% here. Help me out. And the guy is like, let me tell you. And we're teamsing to each other. And he's like, here are 3 bullets I would use. So I can't sustain this forever. But the idea is you have to have a hub of shared information. This is our general positioning. This is how we address corporate markets, how we address private markets, how we address small business. And someone's got to pay attention. But the paying attention, back to my earlier point, is you have to have a sense of it a little. Like small business, you're talking about lending money. Like you got to understand, like you're lending money, so they might have a credit card. You know, you're also talking about payables and like how do they actually get money in. And so you need to understand the business more than enough to be able to ask smart questions so you don't spend a ton of time chasing, chasing your tail.
So, in my view, I grew up in manufacturing. I was a foreman in my factory, that's the first job I ever had. I loved it. There's an assembly line in your business. It may be completely invisible. It may be in 1,000 different places. But at the end of the day, if you listen to Daniel's story about making that ad, you sourced it from somewhere. You had the old ad. You accessed that ad and added some new flavors. You asked it to personalize it to a new buyer persona, a rich person versus a not rich person.
Something like that.
You refined it as a human. You said verbally that it was compliant, but I don't exactly know how, unless you're brilliant.
If you talk about products, you're in a different world. If you talk about just platitudes, it's generally going to be compliant.
And again, there's this whole notion of assembly. A lot of people build modular content pieces. The latest results, the brand messaging, a persona-based case study or whatever. That type of thing happens. So this is just a really simplistic view of a process that happens. Agencies do this. This could be hundreds of people. Does this make sense? Do you think about the way you guys create content in your organizations this way? Or is this just me wishing I was back in the factory with, in the good old days? You do? Do you have a king or queen who runs this? Is there a flow chart or anything like that?
There are guidelines. There is a process. Yes. Thank you. There is a process. Is it followed 100% of the time? No, but that's okay because there are going to be senior executives or market leaders that need something fast. But yes, it's a factory.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you said. It's a factory, but sometimes we go a little off the assembly line.
Well, that builds it. This is, I think, a big insurance company. I think I can say MetLife, but I'm sourcing a person from it. But this is a facsimile about how one big financial services firm does it. This is a board-level presentation. It's probably a little sexier than it really is in real life. But some interesting thoughts. They think audience signals and needs. People are asking questions about password or what do I do about the revolution in another country or, what should I be worried about gas prices or whatever. Signals are out there. That informs market research, voice of the customer. In the RFP world, RFP questions, DDQ questions, customer service questions, product complaints, one loss analysis, right?
Yeah.
I lost this deal because I did not answer this question. Signals go in the middle. You evaluate, do I have answers to that? Do I have to write the answer? Where's it going to come from? And then in the middle, you got a lot of workflow. I love the notion of testing. One of the cool things AI can do is test a message. They can actually create AI. EY is doing this.
Yeah.
AI-generated persona, and like you said, it's not that bad. This person would spit that message out and throw up. This punch is going to land. And so that testing could be happening in real time and creating a feedback loop. And then, of course, compliance.
Right.
AI could do that. You could have red teams, competitors. You can have AI do it, or you could double check. One of the things one of my clients did was our firm has 20,000 employees and this many assets under management. It was from last year's annual report. It wasn't up to date. Or if, oh, yes, this is, compliant to this, we follow this law. Well, the law changed or the rule changed. So catching that, asset management, I would say on content, the knowledge base, digital asset management is huge.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of organizations use their RFP knowledge base as the single source of truth because it's got the best questions, it's got the latest answers, and people like Daniel and the head of product and the head of compliance are all over it because it came from a really big RFP. It wasn't just some random active content that happened somewhere. So I'm seeing that happen, and obviously publishing across many channels. So do you have comments on this?
I do. So there are three things I want to comment on. The first is I think content management systems have evolved a lot. And when I was at JP Morgan, which would now be 13 years ago, we were an early user of something called Zinnovation. I think it's called Zinn now, X-I-N-N. And we didn't, there are only 200,000 other people with me doing this, but we tested it in asset management and private banking. We didn't have a real lead. I mean, I did not take the lead, but it was like, what should the content be and how should it be organized? I think a lot of those questions are now moot. It's obvious how to organize content. We at Flagstar are moving into a relationship with Seismic, which is also a content management platform. The two operative words or verbs I think of are library and assembly. So you basically, it's
Yes.
a library because you're going to structure chapters, infinite number of chapters if you choose, of information, and then it's an assembly system, factory-like. That's really, really critical. When I used to be in the RFP business, more like back at JP Morgan, that would have been great to have. We had these very primitive platforms like RFP Maker or something like that, I forget what it's called, that were really clunky. But that is really important. And content management, if you're a one-person shop or a four-person shop, or you don't really know your way around and you're a three-person shop, or if you're a 25-person shop, which is my group, you really need to have a structure. You need to have a chapter structure and so forth. And I'll just give you a quick highlight in there. So something that I push for all the time with our content management is, I use the word modules all the time. A module could be one PowerPoint page or it could be 20 PowerPoint pages. It's linked to compliant disclosure and disclaimer information. It's really, really critical because you want, back to my theme, you want your salespeople out there selling. You don't want your salespeople mucking around with pitch books and saying, oh, I don't like page 12, I want to do this. So that's something I want to say. Content management system is critical. AI and testing. So you mentioned testing. I won't go into a long thing about testing, but one of my concerns with AI and testing creative is, there's a much more clever sociology phrase, but basically the bias goes to the winner and you ignore numbers 2, 3, and 4. So if I have a digital asset out there talking about, I'll just use CD rates, and I have 4 tests and different headlines, different image. These are like beautiful people. These are semi-beautiful people. These are rich people. This is just type. And the messaging on the type is different. So maybe I have 7 variations.
And one wins by a hair.
And one wins by a hair. What AI tells us to do is to discard the other 6. So that's a mistake. But you got to have a ton of time and really insight to be able to look at it and say, holy moly, the one with the beautiful rich people actually tests really well. And even though we can all make
With
fun,
beautiful rich people.
well, but there are some realities in the world of advertising, as I would call it, and some of that stuff you've got to be really smart about and pay attention to. Don't get hung up on my example. My point is AI will optimize very efficiently, but optimization inherent in that is that you might be discarding the also-rans. And then the third thing I was going to say is, so this is just one word. You need an expiration date. So use the example of an RFP with data that's old. The most important thing, not the most, really important thing is to have an expiration date. So if you have content in there that's only good in the year 2024, you need to build in, through your coding or through the way you set it up, the ability to expire content. And that's really critical because clearly, if you're advertising, I'll go back to my thing about talking about CD rates. We did a campaign 18 months ago. It was 5.55% on a CD. Well, today it's like 3.7. So if I have an asset that says 5.55%, somebody clicks on it, claims that they're expecting a 5.5, we're going to end up paying that customer the 5.55% because our digital asset management, our DAM, didn't expire the out of date.
You got a carbon date. I want to build on that. That's a really important point. What I see best practices are, one, expiration date. Two, the AI alerts the person. So the person who does that, product managers in tech, product features, pricing, performance change all the time. So they actually have it every month. You got to take all the content and send it back to the product manager to say, is this still relevant, or did the price change, or did the law change, or whatever else? And what's really nice about that is product managers aren't really paid, or your investment analysts aren't really paid to help us. And so this actually makes their lives a lot easier. Another thing about current content is one of the big issues in content right now is you need different types of content to drive what's called generative engine optimization.
Right.
And one of the things those LLMs look for is current and refreshed content. So even if it's evergreen, it's, the sky is blue, that's not going to change. You need new stuff because it's going to impact your ranking now. And so we're down to the speed round here, but I didn't want to ignore a couple issues. One aspect of content and AI is that the AI engines, the LLMs, the generative are increasingly part of the go-to-market. In fact, I just saw ChatGPT and Walmart got together, so you can actually buy something without ever going to e-commerce. ChatGPT just goes into Walmart and buys it. So you got to start thinking about this conversation coming out of AI that's going to go all the way. And so content coverage of topics. Are you saturation bombing that content? Is it up to date? Is it consistent across channels, or are you confusing them? Is it reusable, repurposable? Is it visible? That's technical. Is it retrievable? That's technical and tagging. Is it non-branded? One of the biggest things is brands love themselves too much, to quote yourself, and they write about themselves. They don't write about mundane topics like password resets or setting your router, which are the things the customers really care about. And so if I go into a company, most of the searches are non-branded content, and no one is thinking like that. Long firm and credible. The last thing, though, I wanted to do to build on your point is this. Trust scoring. One of the elements of a knowledge base is you've got to build your own trust internally. You can't go outside. Maybe you work with Dow Jones or Refinitiv. But I'm seeing really good applications of this is trace scoring from a company called Responsive, who I like a lot. Trace stands for, is it trustworthy, relevant, accurate, complete, explainable? And can I see, was it the 2025 annual report or the 2024? If I'm answering a question or pulling up content, and marketing people use this is actually an RFP database, but they're like, well, it's more reliable than the other database because I can see that it's wrong. Your gut will tell you it's wrong. Like, oh, there's been a lot of volatility in the market. Are these numbers right? This actually gives you that. So another use of AI is the content any good? And if we're going to do recommendation engines or have AI assemble content automatically, I'd want this checkpoint in there. So we're really up against time here, and I'm actually the MC, so I'm going to introduce the next host. I don't want to piss that person off.
Can I make one last comment?
But of course, because what you say is smarter than what I say.
Hardly, but thank you for saying that. The refreshing of making content relevant and current is by asking salespeople. So I can't underscore that enough. No one's interested. I mean, I might be smarter than the average bear, but I don't know enough to actually know what's going on in a conversation between a prospective business and one of our lenders, or be a very wealthy family or family office and one of our private bankers. But if I develop a relationship with our salespeople, with our bankers, and they trust me, which of course there's no reason not to really trust me, and I say, what do you guys talk about? What are they asking about Flagstar? What are their questions? These guys will tell me, will tell you, and that's where you get that's your source for what to do in terms of updating. No one's looking, we don't work for Popeyes or Arby's, like I like roast beef more than, like I thought of a concept. It's not like that. You can really ask the people who deal with clients, ask the people who deal with prospects, what are those conversations like? What are they asking you about? And therefore, you then know what you should be working on in terms of building out.
I'll extend that. That goes to customer service. That goes to DDQs and RFPs and and inquiries on the website. If your clients are asking what you think are stupid questions, you probably aren't doing a very good job with your content.
And DDQ is due diligence questions,
Oh,
not,
sorry,
not
yeah.
Dairy Queen.
Yeah, Dairy Queen.
Because I mentioned Arby's, so I
Yeah.
don't want to get you confused.
I know we're butting up against time. I'll be here all day. Is our next speaker here? Because I'm in an awkward situation. I don't want to mess with
Yes.
you, but we'll be around. And I'm sorry we don't have time for questions, but I got to keep us on time.
Thank you.
And